Everyone called Pat McGrath the queen of billion-dollar beauty, but behind those runway lights hid a debt trap no one saw coming. On paper, her company was worth $1.4 billion. Then the numbers failed. A $17.5 million loan turned into $43 million of crushing debt, and the empire imploded overnight. What truly collapsed inside the world's most glamorous beauty brand? And who was left holding the empty promises? The truth is far messier than you think. Pat McGrath spent 3 decades transforming faces behind the world's most famous runway shows. Her signature looks for Chanel, Dior, Valentino, and Louis Vuitton set the standard for high fashion. Magazine covers, Met Gala red carpets, and backstage chaos. All of it carried her unmistakable mark. Editors called her a magician. Designers called her indispensable. Models lined up to be painted by her hand, knowing her work could launch a career overnight. In June 2015, Pat McGrath stepped out from backstage and put her own name on the line. She did not just launch a makeup brand. She released a single product called Gold 001, a metallic pigment that shimmered like molten gold. She sold it exclusively online, hyped through a cryptic Instagram countdown, with no traditional ads and no retail partners. 1,000 units were gone in 6 minutes, at $60 each. Beauty editors crashed the site. Social media exploded with swatches and reviews. Suddenly, Pat McGrath Labs was not just a brand, it was an event. Retail giants took notice. Sephora, the gatekeeper of prestige beauty, brought Pat McGrath Labs into 54 stores across the US. Shelves emptied as soon as they were stocked. Makeup artists and fans posted videos holding the signature black and gold packaging, treating each palette like a trophy. The brand's reputation grew on a mix of scarcity, artistry, and McGrath's own mythic status. Every new release became a cultural moment. Limited drops, secret wait lists, and sold-out signs that fueled even more demand. Pat McGrath herself became a symbol of possibility. A black British woman at the top of an industry long dominated by others, she was celebrated as a visionary. Fashion journalists chronicled her every move. Awards poured in. British Fashion Council, Time's 100 Most Influential, Vogue's Power List. Her backstage photos with supermodels and designers became legendary, proof that she was both the architect and the face of her empire. The aura around Pat McGrath Labs was pure luxury. The packaging felt heavy, the pigments intense, the formulas secret. Fans saved up for months to buy a single palette. Beauty insiders whispered about her next move. Investors circled, drawn by the hype and the promise that this was the future of prestige cosmetics. The industry buzzed with one question: how big could Pat McGrath Labs become? Beneath the surface, the glamour masked a relentless drive. Every launch had to outdo the last. The pressure to deliver never let up. But as the world watched the meteoric rise, few noticed the cracks beginning to form behind the gold foil packaging. The numbers hit the headlines like a thunderclap. In July 2018, French investment firm Eurazeo poured $60 million into Pat McGrath Labs, instantly branding the company a unicorn. The valuation was $1 billion. That figure flashed across beauty trade magazines, business pages, and Instagram feeds, turning Pat McGrath from backstage legend into a paper billionaire. Onlookers marveled at how a brand built on scarcity and artistry could command such a sum. Analysts pointed to projections: $60 million in annual sales, global expansion, and a supposed stranglehold on the prestige cosmetics market. The narrative was irresistible. Pat McGrath herself reportedly held a 70 to 80% stake, making her, at least on paper, the richest self-made woman in beauty. The hype only grew. By January 2021, a new round of investors paid $183 million for a small slice of the company, pushing the implied valuation to a staggering $1.42 billion. The press hailed it as proof that artistry could outmuscle legacy giants. Beauty insiders speculated about a future initial public offering, global flagships, and a product pipeline that would leave competitors scrambling. Media outlets ran glowing profiles, crowning McGrath as the queen of the billion-dollar beauty club. Each headline fueled a sense of inevitability. This was the future of luxury makeup, and the numbers seemed to prove it. But behind those headlines, the story belonged to the investors. The billion-dollar label was not the result of audited revenue or sustained profits. It was a bet, a projection, a story sold as fact. Eurazio's $60 million was not just an endorsement of McGrath's artistry. It was a calculated move to ride the wave of beauty's Instagram-fueled boom. The 2021 secondary deal, with its $1.42 billion figure, relied on even loftier expectations. These were not cash in the bank numbers. They were promises built on the idea that the brand would keep growing, keep selling out, and keep pulling in new fans at an accelerating pace. The industry buzzed with speculation. How much was hype, and how much was real? Analysts quietly wondered if the company could actually hit those projected sales, or if the valuations were just smoke and mirrors. Early investors like Eurazio quietly cashed out by 2021, taking their winnings and leaving questions behind. For a brief moment, the headlines made it all look effortless. A billion-dollar brand built on creativity and scarcity. But the paper peak would soon face a harsh reality check. The numbers that made Pat McGrath Labs famous would become the very figures that demanded a closer look, and the difference between hype and hard sales was about to come into sharp focus. On paper, Pat McGrath Labs looked unstoppable. But the company ledger told a different story, a story of flat lines and missed targets hiding behind the shimmer of viral launches. The billion-dollar valuation was built on projections of $60 million in annual sales. Yet by 2024, the brand's direct website brought in just $23 million. Adding up every retail partner and every pallet sold, total revenue hovered around $50 million for the entire year. That figure had not budged since the first wave of Sephora expansion back in 2018. The numbers became even more stark heading into the crucial holiday season. In November 2025, Pat McGrath Labs recorded monthly sales of $1.86 million. For most beauty brands, the holidays are a lifeline, a time when sales spike by 30 to 50%, fueled by gift sets and limited editions. But the holiday bump for Pat McGrath Labs barely reached 5 to 10%. The brand's most loyal fans still lined up for the latest drop, but the wider market had moved on. Competitors harnessed influencer power and TikTok virality, while Pat McGrath Labs relied on the same formulas, the same faces, and the same myth of scarcity that once made it a sensation. Behind the scenes, the pressure mounted. The company's ambitious projections had justified sky-high valuations and attracted millions in investment, but those promises were now impossible to fulfill. The cost of maintaining luxury packaging, exclusive partnerships, and a global supply chain kept rising, even as revenue stayed locked in place. Every new product launch carried the weight of expectation and the risk of disappointment. By late 2025, the gap between what investors believed and what the company could actually deliver was no longer something that could be hidden with clever marketing or runway glitz. The numbers spoke for themselves, and they painted a picture of a business running out of room to maneuver. Celebrity beauty brands once promised easy riches and endless growth. But by 2026, the industry looked more like a graveyard than a gold rush. Drew Barrymore's Flower Beauty, after 13 years, shuttered its doors in September 2024. Kim Kardashian's SKKN, hyped as the next skincare revolution, quietly vanished from shelves. Beautycounter, once valued at $1 billion, filed for bankruptcy. Ren Clean Skincare, a staple in clean beauty, disappeared. Youthforia, a viral TikTok favorite, collapsed under mounting losses. Ami Cole, celebrated for its inclusive formulas, joined the casualties. Even influencer-backed lines that seemed untouchable faced layoffs, lawsuits, or liquidation. The reasons cut deeper than any one founder's misstep. Amazon undercut prices and devoured market share. Sephora and Ulta, once eager to fill shelves with celebrity names, shifted focus to their own house brands and the next wave of viral hits. Social media algorithms changed, making it harder for brands to reach loyal fans without buying expensive ads. Meanwhile, upstarts like Rare Beauty and Rhode, powered by relentless influencer content and affordable prices, captured the next generation of shoppers. Investors who once threw money at anything with a famous face started pulling back. Market reports showed that prestige beauty sales were flat or shrinking, especially in categories like eyeshadow and high-end skincare. Repeat purchases dwindled. Brands that couldn't adapt to faster trends or lower price points got squeezed out. The crash wasn't just about bad luck. It was a warning to anyone who believed that celebrity alone could guarantee success. Behind every glossy campaign was a harsh reality. The old playbook didn't work anymore. The industry's shakeout left a trail of broken promises and burned-out founders. For Pat McGrath Labs, the warning signs were everywhere. The question was no longer how high a brand could climb, but how long it could survive in a market that was turning on its own stars. April 2025 brought a crossroads that no beauty founder wants to face. Pat McGrath Labs, squeezed by flatlining sales and mounting bills, turned to a last resort, a bridge loan for $17.5 million from GDA PMG funding. This was not a strategic partnership or a friendly bank line. This was hard money, the kind of quick cash lenders offer when traditional banks say no. The company needed the money to cover overdue invoices and restock inventory, but the terms were strict and the clock was ticking. The bridge loan was supposed to buy time, just 90 days to get through the crunch and keep product on shelves. But the deal came with strings. GDA did not just hand over the money and wait for repayment. The agreement gave the lender sweeping rights over incoming revenue. Every dollar from Sephora, Ulta, or the website now flowed through accounts controlled by GDA. The company lost the ability to pay suppliers or staff without lender approval. Inside the company, the mood shifted overnight. The sense of independence that fueled Pat McGrath's rise evaporated. Now every financial move required approval from outsiders who cared less about artistry and more about collateral. The pressure to deliver results grew sharper, but with cash flow locked down, even basic operations became a struggle. As the days ticked by, the promised breathing room never arrived. Instead, the bridge loan became a chokehold. GDA's presence loomed over every decision, and the power dynamic flipped. What was meant to be a temporary fix had opened the door to outside control, setting the stage for a debt spiral that would threaten everything Pat McGrath had built. The bridge loan for $17.5 million was never meant to last. Within weeks, the numbers turned toxic. GDA PMG funding, now holding the purse strings, imposed amendments that gave them sweeping control over every cent of incoming revenue. As the company struggled to keep up with payments, penalties, and interest piled on top of the original debt. By June 2025, GDA's claim had ballooned to a staggering $43 million, nearly 2.5 times the amount borrowed, and all in less than 8 weeks. The interest rates, disputed in court but described by insiders as punishing, devoured any hope of recovery. Every day without repayment meant more fees, more compounding, more leverage for the lender. Forensic accountants pored over the books, tracking the flow of cash and the mounting obligations. The company's liquidity vanished almost overnight, with GDA's lockbox draining operating funds that should have gone to inventory, payroll, and suppliers. The mechanics of the trap were all there in black and white, a short-term fix twisted by amendments and fine print into a debt spiral that left Pat McGrath Labs gasping for air. The power dynamic between founder and lender had flipped completely, artistry and vision replaced by daily calculations of survival. March 2025 brought a headline-grabbing announcement. Pat McGrath would become creative director for Louis Vuitton's new beauty line. The timing was impossible to ignore. While the world celebrated her ascent to fashion's highest throne, her own company was fighting for survival. Inside Pat McGrath Labs, the mood was anything but glamorous. With cash locked away by the lender, employees waited for paychecks that never came. Payroll records showed months of missed wages, leaving staff scrambling to cover rent and basic bills. Warehouse workers, chemists, and marketers, many of them loyal for years, were suddenly left in limbo. Suppliers faced the same silence. Invoices from Italian pigment houses and Korean packaging firms stacked up, unpaid. Over $400,000 in outstanding bills meant shipments stopped, halting production lines. Vendors who once boasted about working with the world's most famous makeup artist now worried they would never see a dime. The fallout rippled beyond the boardroom, touching every person who helped build the brand's reputation. The glamour of a Louis Vuitton appointment could not erase the pain of unpaid wages or broken promises. For those behind the scenes, the collapse was not just a business story, it was personal. December 2025 brought a flurry of legal notices as Hilco Global began shopping Pat McGrath Labs' assets to the world's largest beauty conglomerates. The numbers were a gut punch. Hilco's marketing materials pitched a sale price between $149 and $174 million, a staggering collapse from the brand's former $1.42 billion peak. At the same time, GDA PMG Funding, the hard money lender now claiming tens of millions in debt, launched its own competing auction, arguing their control over the company's assets superseded everyone else. The confusion sent potential buyers running, wary of a courtroom tug-of-war over who actually owned the brand. On January 22, 2026, just days before the scheduled sale, Pat McGrath Labs filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the Southern District of Florida. The filing froze both auctions and threw the fate of the company into the hands of the court. In the first round of bankruptcy hearings, McGrath herself offered $1 million in debtor-in-possession financing, hoping to keep the lights on and pay employees. GDA countered with a $10 million proposal, pushing for control of the process and repayment priority. Liabilities now stood between $50 and $100 million, with the court set as the final arbiter of what remained of a billion-dollar dream. Today, billion-dollar headlines still lure investors and founders into the same high-stakes illusions. As private valuations soar and debt grows cheaper, the beauty industry's next collapse could already be set in motion. Financial reality always catches up, no matter the celebrity, no matter the brand. In an era addicted to hype, the numbers behind the glamour matter more than ever. Drop your thoughts below. What do you see coming next?